live from the apocalypse. I am your playful, cockeyed Danny Orange, living the street life. My accomplice in this musical expedition. You might know him as if you remember Freeway from The Rock. He was Freeway's gym teacher in third grade. So, K. Dickey, welcome back.
Yeah, man.
The state of the game. Today we took on a mighty task, going outside of our comfortable range.
Straight from the bottle.
Yep.
Heads.
So, I did an interview with one of my favorite rappers, Niko Is. And it's been a crazy journey because I was covering him before he got signed to Talib Kweli's label. And he's kind of become a bigger and bigger deal. And so at the end, one of the questions I asked him, because he was like, I don't really feel like my culture's been represented in music. And I was like, give us like a 5-album starter kit for understanding this music. And we picked some of those albums today. One of them is one of his, which is great. I was happy to see that. Unico. And I wanted to talk about the kind of character and aspects of these albums and what makes them so important. In the world of music and probably to him as well, right? Let me see here. Yeah, we study the albums, find any common threads between them, strengths in the music that other music just doesn't have, right? What is different from this and, other forms of music we might be more used to? So let's talk about it, man. What stuck out to you?
What do you mean? Just in general, or like?
Well, yeah. What hit you hard? What were you interested in amongst these 4 albums?
Okay. Let's see. The ones that really stuck with me. I mean, all 4 of them had musical moments that I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I loved The Waves by Antonio Carlos Jobim.
Wave, yep. Jobim.
I mean, I was a fan of some of his other work. Like, he did an album that I was a really big fan of that featured the girl from Ipanema.
To give people some, I'm sorry to kind of give
people
some backstory on Jobim. It's like the compositional godfather of bossa nova.
Yeah.
The Al Capone of bossa nova, like all of the major compositions that you recognize as Brazilian bossa nova are his. Go ahead.
And so what I was gonna say is, like, listening, because I've listened to bossa nova, I'm very familiar with Brazilian music, but when doing research for this week, I was able to listen to it with a new ear. Like, I was able to listen to more of the elements and the composition of the music, as opposed to just like enjoying the mood and vibe that it created.
Right. I think when you hear it next to, just to put my cards on the table, I think my favorite of these was Transa.
Yeah.
By Caetano Veloso,
yeah.
Yep. And when you hear it next to, let me see here. Yep, Veloso. When you hear it when you're Transa next to Wave, it makes Wave sound different.
Yes, absolutely.
That makes sense?
Yep.
And I say that just to say that Um, I was getting my hair cut outside. Um,
Okay.
and I
All
was like,
right.
and I was putting on music. I got the new Bluetooth speaker. I'm pumped about it. And I'm like, what can I put on? Because like a lot of like I can't put Action Bronson on. Like the kids out here, man.
Yeah.
The neighbors, bro. Like so I got like let's get started on this research. So I threw on the Wave, Jobim.
Yep.
Won't disturb anybody. It's cool. My wife instantly reacts negatively to it. She's like, what is this fucking elevator music shit you got going? Um, and I was like, well, and I was listening to it, considering her position, and I said, you know what was so fucking innovative about this?
Hmm.
It was that compositionally Jobim built an entire genre, subgenre around a light guitar.
Yeah.
And like no one in jazz had ever fucking thought of that before.
Yeah.
Like you had like the Art Blakey like drum first jazz
Yeah.
band. You had like obviously the Coltrane saxophone first, right? Miles Davis trumpet out front kind of things. But when you're talking about just like kind of the light strumming of a guitar and everything builds around that,
Yeah. I mean, I
it's
think,
insane. It's insane to think about.
and I think what it made me realize, like, because I've listened to a lot of bossa nova, but it made me realize like the light guitar, it's very emotive. Like I think it almost, for some of the songs, it replaces like this actual singing of a live singer. And there's like a lot of emotions that can be expressed with that light guitar playing.
It's the reason I would say I said it's insane and innovative and nuts is because you like so putting it in modern context, trap music took over the world. Do you know why?
Why?
Obviously, the creators of it were geniuses. That's one reason. A huge reason is what I used to call follow the bouncing ball.
Mm-hmm.
That like trap beats were just like boom, boom, boom. But you could like everybody could follow the pattern of what was
Right.
going on. The,
That's a good point.
it was just the 808s were very in sync.
Right.
Everybody knew the groove of it. The rapper knew the pocket. No risk here, right?
Right.
You're gonna know as the listener. You're gonna know the pocket as well as the MC.
Right.
If you've heard enough trap, you get it. And there's still a follow the bouncing ball element to the Jobim wave stuff, where you're still like, do 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 do. You're following it, man. You're following it, but it's light. It's light. It's not anthemic. It's very
Did you know, like,
slow.
I was actually shocked when doing research. Do you know who the bass player on this album was?
So glad you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Living legend Ron Carter.
Yeah,
I
man.
feel like he was on.
Shocked.
I feel like Ron Carter was on every fucking album that we did on that jazz episode.
Yeah.
When we picked like the biggest Blue Note jazz albums from 66 to 70, whatever, 26, he was fucking everywhere. Ron Carter was
Yeah.
everywhere, dude. So shout out to Ron Carter, man. Amazing.
And I mean, I think like if you have, and it makes sense, like if you have a genius bass player with bossa nova, you have to have a bass player that can keep that steady beat.
Right.
And Ron Carter is a legend on the bass. So
right.
I was very shocked to learn that, actually, that he was on here, but it makes sense to me.
Would you describe it as that? The Jobim sound is like a buddy cop movie between the guitar and the bass?
Yeah, I mean, the bass is always going to be, with bossa nova, the bass is always for me, it's the most essential element, and then all of the other relationships are built around that bass, are built in relationship to that bass. In my opinion, because I think the bass sets the timing. So you really like, and it's like you said with the bouncing ball, like if you listen to that bass and it's so consistent, it's almost like trance-like. That's why you put it on and it relaxes you.
Yep. No, there's a hypnotic quality to the situation. And so that was, and so he's kind of the foundation that it goes from. Now, the thing about Wave that's weird, and it's not my favorite of these albums, but I respect the hell out of it.
Yeah.
It's disarming, and it is like the hypnosis, trickery, like I can't distinguish songs. Like you get lost in it.
Yeah,
you just get lost in it.
I mean, it's one of those albums. Bossa Nova is very much a vibe, a specific setting. I could see why your wife would be upset about, like, if it's like 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you probably don't want to be listening to Bossa Nova.
Right.
I see more Bossa Nova as like evening, like late night music that you can just vibe out to. Like you said, go in that trance and just relax. It's extremely calming.
And what I found interesting was the criticism she had of it as the kind of shitty elevator music is usually the argument jazz people give to West Coast jazz, right? The Jerry Mulligan, Paul Desmond, those guys with West Coast stuff opened the door to this kind of gentle, low-key elevator music.
Yeah.
And I guess I had never connected that to Jobim and to Bossa Nova as a primary cause. But if you listen to Wave, you can totally hear how the next level down from this would suck a lot. Right?
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
A guy half as talented as Jobim doing this music would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's the trick of minimalism, right? Like, in a way, minimalism is the riskiest shit of all.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a safety net, man.
No. And if you're gonna play this minimal, I think what distinguishes Jobim from other artists is that this is, I mean, the guys he worked with are high level musicians.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So I mean, you've got a Ron Carter. So yeah, I mean, what they're playing is very simple, but they're bringing their expertise and their soul to that music. And that's what distinguishes it. Like, if you're working with someone who's a little bit less skilled, they're not going to be able to get that same that these guys have.
Yeah, if someone like Ron Carter doesn't just play it the way you want him to play it. Yeah. He creates an emotional landscape with his playing, right? And so that's present on that album. Which, I mean, it's just an interesting point and an interesting way to start. And the opposite of Jobim-Wave is probably Hector Lavoe-La Voz. Who's also on this list. Yeah.
And they're separated by 8 years. I wanted to say, so let me look. So Waves came out in 1967. Lavoe came out in 1975.
Right. Yep. And while that starts in, Fania is a Brazilian label. There's no question about it. But a lot of the sound of Fania is like Tito Puente, New York salsa.
Yeah, because Hector Lavoe is Puerto Rican.
Right. And a lot of the guys on there, if you listen to it, like they had music that was very referential of like doo-wop, or
Hmm.
that was very tied to like the kind of Tito Puente drums,
Yep.
and that New York salsa sound. So Lavoe's is the one here that almost doesn't feel Brazilian,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this
because
is a
it's like
total contrast.
it's it's just so electric with that salsa
Yeah.
energy. It's not about light guitar, it's about horns and
Horns.
congas,
Exactly.
right? Like
Yep.
horns and congas, and we're partying, and
Yeah.
it's awesome. What a record that is, dude. Um,
Hmm.
the weird part, can I tell you what I was instantly like, holy shit, when I heard this, because one of these songs has been in my life since I was a teenager.
Okay.
So I was just like, holy shit. It was a big moment. Mi Gente.
Yeah. That was the hit off the album.
Mi Gente is a big part of Carlito's Way, the movie Carlito's Way. It's like
Yeah.
playing in the background in his club as his life is like collapsing, right? Bad guys are coming and all that shit, right? So Mi Gente like may sound joyous to some people, but it sounds tense to me. It sounds tense because it really does build. It's a song that builds. Um, and I guess my comparison was, you've seen Goodfellas, right?
Yeah.
You remember the scene where he's like, where they're doing pasta and he's on coke and he's making deliveries. Remember this?
Yes.
And there's a song that plays throughout it. It's Harry Nielsen's "Jump into the Fire," and that song gets like tied to that building tension,
Right.
because it was picked because it sounds like building tension.
Yeah.
So Mi Gente in the same way, it sounds, there's like there's a kind of a throbbing there. There's a pulsing. Like
Yeah. I mean, I think like when you compare this to the bossa nova, if we're going to compare this to Wave, there's much more tension in Lavoe's. And I mean, if you think about when you're in the club, you tension in the club is what you're actually looking for. You know what I mean? You're looking for music that has tension, that's going to get your heart racing, going to get you excited. You know what I mean? And that's I mean, definitely, and particularly, you know, with the horn, like you mentioned, the horns. I mean, they're so aggressive. There's some tracks, I mean, on this album, there's some tracks where I feel like the horns were doubled more than any other instrument on, like they doubled the sound of the horns just so that they're in your face.
Oh yeah, the unignorable. It's time to party, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find, there was the Rompe Seregue on this fifth song. That was my
Okay.
alarm clock this morning. Because trash day, I gotta wake up early. And I was like, dude, those horns are gonna wake me up.
It's gonna wake everyone in the house up.
You can't ignore those horns, dude. I think my son was like, I'm not even setting my alarm. Your alarm will do it. It'll be fine. So, but you're right. The horns are everywhere. And I posted like a 1 minute, maybe less than 1 minute clip from the Fania All Stars Hector Lavoe performance of Mi Gente. And I don't know if you saw it, um, but like all these people started liking it. It was like a big thing because that song is really tied to a lot of people's memories. Uh,
Yeah.
and it was just all these dudes with like shirts unbuttoned down to here,
Yeah, man.
chest out, afros. Like, dude, everyone's playing the shit out of their instrument.
Yeah.
Congas,
Yep.
fucking, yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I think Lavoe, like that was the soul, like that music was the soul of the people at that time. I mean, it still is, but I mean, I think like with bossa nova, like the the light guitar is kind of what kind of serves as like a human voice replacement. With some of these songs, like the horns are just so aggressive, like they almost, I think the word I use, they're so emotive, like they communicate so much. I think like the horns, there's a lot of emotion tied to the horns. There's a lot of soul, and I think that's what particularly the Puerto Rican people, that's what they saw their soul reflected in those horns.
And I mean, Latinx people in general, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Hector Lavoe
Yes.
is a giant in this game, and I mean, I loved the quote you just said of "Soul of the People" in terms
Yep.
of, because you know what I was thinking of in soul music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he Smokey Robinson was the sound of the radio,
Mm-hmm.
but James Brown was the soul of the people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Perfect sense.
They called in James Brown to perform after MLK got killed because they thought he could calm them down. Like, um, you know, so it's the same thing with you've heard I don't know if you've heard the Stax record story, but Motown had Hitsville outside of the company. That was their kind of expression.
Mm-hmm.
When Stax Records set up with Otis Redding and all those guys, Isaac Hayes, they put Soulsville outside. They're like, we don't care. So it's a difference. It's a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, Laveau is definitely the soul of it. There's so much energy,
Yep.
and as we talked about how big those instrumentation is,
Mm-hmm.
he's over top it, dude. He's
Yeah.
over top it. He's never dwarfed.
No. No, which is amazing, a feat in itself,
It's an
actually.
incredible accomplishment. It's hard. It's hard to sing over like a wall of sound like that.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to the Who, whoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to stay over that wall. He not only stays over the wall, he sounds so comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he didn't seem overwhelmed at all. Like a lot of artists, I think, would have drowned in that music. Particularly, even because it's so up tempo as well. Like being able to keep up with the tempo of the music and still sing that strongly.
Yep.
I mean, it's a stematical feat, I guess you could say. I just made up that word.
Systematical. Well, and I think that's why some of the other Fania releases I heard were really cool and like had different kind of variations where some of them were like softer, low key, more doo-wop influenced. Some of them were, up tempo for a bit and went down and came up again,
Mm-hmm.
and like, or like, what is it, Chio Feliciano, where it's this beautiful, steady mid tempo. This is Full Throttle, man.
Yeah.
It's Full Throttle, and it's something. I'm a fan. That was a great deal.
Absolutely.
But totally the opposite of Wave, right?
Yes.
So we'll go. What was your first impression of Transa?
So I listened to it chronologically, like the albums in chronological order. So I listened to Waves first, which came out in 1967, and then I listened to Transa, which came out in 72. So they're about, what is that, 5 years apart. I was surprised. Like the first thing that initially caught my attention was the voice. I was surprised by the voice. I wasn't expecting that. But what really stood out to me is, like, I looked at the time, the year it was released, 1972, and I could hear all of the influences that he was inspired by.
That's awesome.
And so I think it was like a special time where he was influenced by some of the sounds of the 60s, but also some of the sounds of the early 70s, particularly because from what I read, he was exiled in London.
Yes.
So he had access to that European and London music scene. And you could hear that in kind of seep into this music.
Right. No, it's and yeah, when I heard the first song and I was like, holy shit, like You Don't Know Me.
Yeah.
And then I looked, who the fuck is this guy? I looked him up. And it was like he wrote this in exile. I'm like, exile? He was exiled by like a military dictatorship because his music was too outspoken, political, and against them. And I was like, oh shit, like I'm in for something here. This music was good enough for him to get exiled, dude. This is gonna get serious. So I just fell in love with it. It's such a cool album.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about the commonalities between Wave. There's still a gentle sonic texture, right?
Yeah.
There's still that kind of light guitar, beautiful bossa nova thing, but it's kind of mixed in with this pre-James Taylor singer-songwriter deal.
Yes. And the bass it's electric as well. Instead of being like the dub bass of the Waves, it's more electric. So that gives it like a totally different vibe. For me, it did. It gave it like a totally different, like it was still, you could tell it was influenced by bossa nova and Brazilian music, but at the same time, it was fundamentally different.
Yeah, no, fundamentally different. Definitely still influenced by bossa nova, but like adding these layers of complexity on top of everything.
Yes.
I mean, if you listen to, I think the worldly the album, but if you listen to, I'm trying to find it now. 9 minutes and like 47 seconds. Tristi Bahe, Bahia. Unbelievable song with such shifting tempos.
Right.
Throughout it. I mean, really, the pace evolves and changes and keeps moving, and his voice follows it. You could tell he wanted to have his Dylan and have his Jobim, and and have all this stuff in one package in one place. But yeah, and his voice is very fragile.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think what he did was masterful. What he did a masterful job of, bossa nova, as we allude to it, bossa nova is meant not to have really any tension. It's supposed to be like you're on a beach or something and you're watching the waves of the ocean. You know what I mean? Just like zoning out. But he was like take that bossa nova sound and add like a layer of tension, just a little bit, not too much, but he was able to add some tension to that normally calm and mellow music.
Yeah, well, and it's, by the way, bossa nova is typically, when it's sung, is meant for beautiful voices.
Yeah.
Right. People think of Astrud and Gil Gilberto from the Stan Getz albums. Whenever a lot of times, like I remember Melody Gardot did a bossa nova album. If somebody has a really beautiful voice, they'll probably do a bossa nova album at some point to try and like showcase it, He has a very fragile voice where you're not always sure he's going to hit the note, right?
Good point. Yeah.
He's getting there, but you're like, is he gonna make it? He does, uh, but it's a real journey. It's a real
Yeah.
journey, and that combined with, as we said, all the evolving sounds coming together,
Mhm.
uh, plus, and I think this is the album's biggest positive, is the lyricism on the album is
Yep.
unbelievable.
Yep. I agree.
I mean, 9 out of 10 movie stars make me cry. Like, what an incredible thing to say.
I mean, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned 9 out of 10 because there was a line that really stuck with me. He goes, "Yes, I know that one day I must die. I'm alive."
Yes. Yep.
And I mean, just the way he sang "I'm alive" it's just haunting. It's
Well, because
beautiful.
he kind of comes back to it, right? He, yeah.
Oh, that's a
Um,
good way to put it. Yeah,
and
I'm alive.
it
Yeah,
becomes like a semi-bridge hook kind of thing. Uh, it's it just it definitely reverberates, and he lets these things reverberate, and he trusts himself to the point where sometimes he's just making weird sounds,
hmm
but it makes sense because he's built it. He's built it fragment by fragment. Uh,
yeah.
oh man, I mean, just the I mean, and I could have gone with these things being longer, like which is how long is Nostalgia?
I think it's less than 2 minutes.
A minute and 22 seconds.
Yeah,
This Nostalgia. Just checked it. I mean, the last song, and it's amazing. There's so
yeah,
much in it, in terms of what he's talking about. Uh, oh man, it's a long way. Neolithic man.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, you don't know me. He's a perfect opening song.
hmm
Uh, it's yeah. I think it's a fantastic album.
I
It's
agree.
it's one of those albums that is not, and I love this. I don't know why it's become a real thing for me. It's part English, part Spanish,
hmm
and it's not. It's woven together to the point where it doesn't really matter
Right,
whether it's 50, 75, 60%. Like you get it.
right.
You get it because it's that well done.
Yeah, I mean, and that the key thing is, his voice and his voice is so like special that like even when you can't understand what he's saying, you can understand what he's trying to say. You can what he's trying to communicate.
Right.
Uh, you know what I mean? And it's just a great. I mean, it's a great way. That's why I really enjoy listening to music from other countries with languages that I can't understand, because it's really like if you can't understand the words, you really have to focus on the emotion and what you think the singer is trying to communicate. And a really skilled singer you'll be able to understand what they're saying without being able to interpret a word that they're saying. So
Yeah, I mean it's because I've always thought of like the sound of Mexico, or as we said, Puerto Rico, being kind of salsa and the big party sound, right?
right.
Uh, and the wave and tranza, and then if you listen to Unico after that, there's this kind of character that comes together for what the Brazilian sound is,
Hmm.
right? Of like it's gonna be cool, it's gonna be relaxed. The music's never gonna stress itself.
Right.
Um, but it's gonna be off kilter in a
hmm
way, right? It's gonna sound like it shouldn't work,
Right.
but it works.
Yeah.
Um, it's an odd jaunt.
hmm
and stuff like this, it kind of reminds me. I don't know if you ever played any of those like fight tournament video games.
Yes.
There was always one character who was super odd.
Like Street Fighter, what was his name? Blanca? Was he like the green guy on Street Fighter? Yeah.
There was always one character who was just like moved weird, had a weird thing, like
yeah.
And well, because I think Street Fighter it might be Vega.
Okay, he was the one with the
Vega.
Do you have the hockey mask and the
claw? Yeah,
yeah.
French assassin or something. And no one I knew wanted to be Vega or could figure out Vega, right?
Right.
Like, they were like, what? Like Blanca's at least a big monster, right? I mean, smash the buttons, man. You got a good shot. But like the French assassin dude was just the weird hair, and everybody was like, "What is this dude?" Like, nobody wanted to be him. Nobody wanted to fight him either, because you fight him and you get wrecked.
Right.
Because he's in a groove, and you might not ever catch that groove. He might get you. So that music reminds me kind of that character. I'm like, it's the most stylish person in the room, and you're just like, who is this motherfucker? So, and that brings us to Unico, which I'm glad he included on the list, just because I think it is. I don't think it's his lyrically best album.
Mm-hmm.
I think he sacrificed some of what he can do lyrically for the vibe of the record.
Okay.
I don't know if you know this. You can go on YouTube and just put Niko Is freestyle. He can rap all day, every day. He's a machine.
Right.
He's a machine. He born to do it. Just one of those dudes.
Right.
And I remember there was a few times when Talib Kweli would get invited on a show. He would just bring Niko Is, and Niko Is would end up freestyling. And I was like, yeah, I don't even need to really like press play on this. I know this is what this dude, he's just an animal like this, you know?
Yeah.
So he like I said, he can rap his ass off. No question. And, yeah, there was a picture on Instagram because I told you he went to the Dave Chappelle camp.
Okay.
Have you heard about this Dave Chappelle summer camp?
No.
Dave Chappelle put together a summer camp full of genius people that had Michelle Wolf and Donnell Rawlings and Common and Talib Kweli and Niko Is. And all kinds of interesting folks. And Chappelle, as you know, there obviously as well. So there's this picture he posted of him just like rapping in the blackout zone, just surrounded by all these really important people at the summer camp, and Common's next to him, and Common's doing the oh shit like thing. And first comment this dude was like, so which song were you performing? And he goes, freestyle.
Wow.
I was like, this motherfucker went to Dave Chappelle Genius Camp. They were like, rap something. He was like, sure, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Because he's got confident in his abilities, man. Like, yeah.
I mean, you can definitely hear, like one of the things that stood out immediately is you can hear his love for the music, particularly rap music, and you can hear that he loves what he does with a passion, and I mean you can hear that in every song.
Yeah, dude. I couldn't agree more. But what did you think of the album? What was your?
it was interesting to me because, you know, it's 17 tracks, and there's not any skits or anything, so it's like 17 tracks of music.
Well, so there is the mental abstracto interlude.
Okay.
You remember
Which
this?
one? Wait, let me
It's,
get my.
it's an interlude based around like dolphin sounds. I love that, dude.
Let me try to get the track, because I mean it was.
But you're right about the hip hop thing, because there are definitely boom bap things in here.
Yes.
There's also, man, No Sleep. Do you remember No Sleep?
No Sleep.
No
Wait.
Sleep is kind of a hyphy song.
The one at the, okay, yes, near the end, yes.
Well, it's
I
right
get no
after
sleep
Currency. It's
while
right after
wait.
the Currency, Third World Money. Yep, it's right after that. But I was like, man, this dude, like, he's just a student of it. He just loves it.
And that's what I took away from it. And this, what was interesting to me is that I felt like there's some albums where they serve as an embodiment of, who's that? Oh, okay. I like that, ODB.
Big baby.
There's some albums that serve as, they're like an embodiment of the artist, their mind, the particular, the artist who did it, it's an embodiment of their mind. Like you can listen to that album and it's almost like you're taking a trip through that artist's mind.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess the best way to say it, like, I've never met Niko is, but listening to this album all the way through, I know who he is.
Yes. I mean, this is an important point about rap music in general, right? If you listen to someone's whole album, there's so much lyrics in it and specific choices,
Right.
that it resembles them. And if they really want it to, it's like you know them because you
Right.
spent that time with them.
And so the two things that I know about Niko is that, one, that he's very curious. I can tell that he enjoys learning about new things. Like he enjoys taking what he learns and implementing it and trying it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is that he's also very versatile. And this kind of ties into my thoughts about the album, is that, like, he's so versatile, and his mind is, you can tell that his mind is trying to absorb everything, that it's like the album is almost too versatile to me. Like on this, there's 17 tracks, and you could pretty much argue that none of them sound the same.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't confuse, like, I wouldn't confuse Silk with Spanish Harlem or something like that.
Totally.
Or Silk with You Could Be My Girl. Like, they're all 17 ideas or 17 tracks, and they're all very unique, which is very, you can't really say that for a lot of albums of this length.
And he wanted that. This was what he wanted, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's called Unico. And he wanted that. I think he achieved it by letting songs breathe a little bit. Right?
Okay, now expand on that. What do you mean by that?
The song that I think from this album that is most connected to Transa and Wave and the Brazilian school of things is You Could Be My Gal.
Yes.
And he really kind of lets it start. He really lets it, like, da 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 da. He lets it go, and then he kind of swims into it. Niko's a born rapper, dude.
Yeah.
He used to start tracks and bulldoze, man. He used to just go in. He's built for it, man.
Yeah.
Listen to him with Action Bronson on the song Steffi Grap. It's just like, let's fucking rap. And so it took him, he was like singing a little bit more. He was grooving with the song a little bit more.
Right.
I mean, all these songs are different, as you mentioned, so his flows have to be different, right?
And that's the thing I wanted to pose to you, because the question like I had is, do you think that an album can have, and the way I phrased this is kind of odd, but I mean, this is what came to mind. Like, I'm thinking of this album like as a meal. Do you think the album can have too much meat on it? Like, do you think an album can have too many good songs on it? Because for me, like there was so many, and what I mean, he's very versatile, and his mind is, all over the map. He's very curious. There's so many good ideas
Right.
presented. Like, it's difficult for me to digest all of them, and so you get like listen to it, I get overwhelmed, and then I just end up not being able to really connect with any of the songs, because they're all like, there's not a bad song on the album. That's the thing. Like, it's very rare that you have a 17 track album and there not be like some filler or something where you kind of like, okay, oh, I don't like this song, let me just like kind of zone out for this one and then wait for the next one.
What is the total runtime? Do we know the total runtime?
Ooh, let me see if I can find that, because that would be very interesting to
Because I've become convinced it's more about the total runtime than it is the amount of songs.
That's a good point. Okay.
Because if you put together like a song, if you put together like 17 songs, but you've got a few like 2-minute songs in there, like that's cool. That can work, right? Like, you're like, oh, it's not an interlude in this, or like a smack talking interlude. But it cleanses the palate a little bit.
Right.
But this really doesn't have that, as far as I know.
Right. I'm trying. Yeah, give me a second. I'm trying to.
These songs are pretty long. Like, there isn't much that is short on here, and his 17 songs. It's a lot. It's a journey.
Let's see.
Another wild thing about Niko is that is present on this album. There's a lot of features from people that you have not heard of, right? He has Styles P, he has Currency, he has Talib Kweli, but he has all kinds of interesting people on here.
The runtime is 1 hour and 8 minutes.
I think anything over 45 is a big commitment, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not worth it. There's been a lot that have been worth it. But if you're asking someone to go over 45 minutes, my rule would be you better have a lot to say. You better be able to deliver that experience. It's like a long movie, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't hate the long movie. They're like, I'm clearing the day and I'm watching this movie. Let's roll.
Right.
I love this movie. You can make that, but you better make that, right? I think Unico does. I think it means a lot in the sense that it's him trying to connect the roots that he's talking about that don't get properly acknowledged,
right,
with the roots that are of hip hop that he is acknowledging. So, and trying to tie it together and not have lines, not be like, here's the beat and here's the Tim Maia sample, right? Like, he's trying to say no more lines. this
Yeah.
is gonna happen, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I did like that. Like, I liked how every song, I could hear a reference to another rapper or musician. And you could tell like he's a very humble dude as well, which I really liked. And like you said, he gave a lot of the artists, like there were artists. Let me pull the track listing up.
Like
I mean, one
Shazmir, I think Shazmir on Silk, right? Like,
Silk, yep. Shazmir on Silk. Ooh, I liked Tigo Calderon on Spanish Harlem.
yep, yep,
The rappers on Spanish Harlem.
yep.
He had Spivak and Traveler on You Could Be My Gal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep,
Um,
yep. All of them are really good.
and like we were talking about, like the Meet Me in the Future, Silk, and Spanish, which were the fourth and sixth song on the album. Meet Me in the Future was 3 minutes and 31 seconds. Silk was 5 minutes and 3 seconds. Spanish Harlem was 5 minutes and 21 seconds.
And this is why, like, I was interviewing about Sofrito 2020, which is another kind of development towards this integration.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, and there's all these amazing features and people I have no fucking idea who they are. And I was like, dude, there's a guy on here called Your Cousin Alex, who's awesome. Like, who is this dude? How do you keep finding these people? I feel like I have my ear to the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know shit. Niko is another level.
Yeah. And yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, and you can tell that he's very, as I said, very curious. And if he finds a new sound or something that intrigues him, he's going to want to find some way to incorporate that into his music.
Totally, 100%, man. So overall, what were you? Overall, did Unico unify the rest of them? Because you went by date, so that must have been your last one.
Yeah.
Did it bring it
Um,
together? Do you feel?
I didn't. I don't think like the elements. It didn't like incorporate. How do I say this? I mean, because there were certain elements of it, but like the elements of bossa nova music and the music, those weren't the emphasis for the songs. But I would say like the soul, and particularly when you look at Tranza.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that we talked about Tranza
Uh,
before we did this. You could tell like he was in that similar vein of taking the DNA of multiple artists and putting them and combining them along with his DNA to create something unique. I'm guessing that's what Unico means, unique. I
I
don't know. That's
I think he is definitely a different character with a different
yeah.
frame of mind. I think uh, he was connecting to the spirit of that music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he wanted to make stuff that you could trace back to it.
Right.
So
Yep.
I think if he heard you, he would say, exactly, great. Like, I'm glad you couldn't hear that in my music,
Yeah.
but you could definitely hear that spiritual connection, right?
Yes.
So
That
like,
soul. Yeah.
yeah, to the like strange imagery of like Caetano
Yeah.
Veloso, to the like gentle strumming or like surprising melody switches, right? Tristi Biha or whatever on the uh, Caetano Veloso, like you could definitely feel that
Mm-hmm.
he was he was representing Veloso, but he was representing Big Daddy Kane as well.
Right.
Like he
Right.
was representing both of them, and
Absolutely.
yeah, I just think he's unlike anybody else. I mean,
Right.
one of the reasons he's always stayed in my favorites.
And I'll repeat it again because I think it bears mentioning. Like there was not a single bad song on this album. I mean, which is a feat in itself. There was just, for me, there was just like, I came down to eat a meal and there was just too much meat. Like all the songs were so good. Like by the time you get halfway through, you're like, man, I'm full now. Like this is, now I'm just gorging myself.
It's so beautiful, and Joey Crates deserves a lot of credit. Thanks, Joey. That's what he goes by. He goes by thanks, Joey. It's great. It's great. For a while there, I would tell everybody like that he was like one of my 3 favorite producers in rap music, because it was, I felt like what he was doing was something no other people were not doing.
Right.
And when Niko, I partially framed my question of like, hey, aren't you happy like Latin X music is really having a moment, right? There's all these like, people individually, Rosalina and Bad Bunny and, all these people that are out there representing Latinx music. And for him to zone in and be like, my culture is not really represented in this. Like, he was like, I'm the one doing that, right? And if you listen to his list, you can start to understand that. You can start to understand that answer of like, oh yeah, there's different environments being like, oh, this is Argentinian trap music, but it's trap music with Argentinian voices and stories, right?
Right.
So he's talking about something that is born from Brazilian and represented on this music as a kind of a meeting of the two cultures rather than hostile takeover, which happens a lot when these mixtures happen.
Yeah. I mean, he was, and a lot, like sometimes they can be almost, when you're trying to make that blend of the past and the present, sometimes you can be too referential. You know what I mean? Like you can be too referential to the past.
Yep.
Thus not really incorporating some of the present, or you can be too present or be too much in the present and just kind of using the past as like a sampling or something, as samples to your music, but it's just really present time music. So he did, I did feel like he kind of, this album was like I don't think he completely accomplished what he wanted to, but I think he was a damn good try, and it was a damn good effort. And as he grows older, and he releases more and more music, he'll get to where he wants to be, I think.
And Sofrito 2020 is 8 songs, and it's a much tighter situation, and it might not be a coincidence. So, and he's been releasing like 10-song things here and there. So he may have learned that lesson. But yeah, it's weird, and it's interesting to think about in terms of what he was going for. Did he achieve what he was going for? And even if he didn't achieve it, if you know what he was trying to achieve, did he achieve it by doing that? Right? Because if you say, like, if I see the cover of Uniko, I can hear the start of it. Like I can hear the Uniko, Uniko. It's such a unique album.
Yeah.
It sounds so interesting.
And I mean, I think for me, the biggest accomplishment for him in my eyes is that, as I said at the beginning, like when I listened to this album and I know who he is.
Right.
And with a lot of artists, they can make a 17-track album and you listen to it. By the end of it, you still have no idea who that person is.
Right. they're tough. They have jewelry. You know, one of
Right.
the things that I talked to Niko is about in the interview was that a lot of the brags that he has are about getting to know people.
Hmm.
Right? He has a song on Sofrito 2020 about having dinner with Hakeem Olajuwon and talking real estate with Hakeem Olajuwon. My favorite Niko Is line of all time, I got to tell him in that story, is eating blowfish sushi with Japanese golfers. And it's just an incredible image of like, holy shit, this dude is like, blowfish sushi, if it's done wrong, it could kill you.
Yeah, you can tell. I know that's probably why Currency loves him. He's right in that vein of that Currency vein. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, yes.
just the imagery like that, and the way like they deliver it is like so laid back. You have to think about like, wait a second, he ate blowfish like
Blowfish sushi
oh,
with
with
Japanese
the
golfers.
Japanese.
You're like, all of that sounds insane. Like, but yeah, he's smart enough to know, like, man, I could tell you I have this car, but all these other rappers have these cars, man.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like the video the first Freedom 2020 is like him on with a grill and a shitload of friends, just like fucking around with like chickens and shit, and just for him, life is valuable, is precious,
Yeah.
and you don't waste it, and you don't let people get you off track from where you're going.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I dig it. I dig it. The whew, I had a heck of a day. The recommendation corner, I'll tell you, because I really there's this kid. I think he's from Denver originally. I think he's in Iowa now.
Okay.
His name is Teller Banks.
Or Banks.
Teller
Okay.
Banks. And I heard about him through this interview, right? The Iceberg Theory. When I did the interview, I was asking him about guests. And the guest that just lit it up, just destroyed, was Teller Banks. I was like, who is this kid? What is going on? And he said, Teller Banks is one of the best rappers in the world.
Wow.
Say I really think he's one of the best rappers in the world. I was like, whoa! Like, you know, if
Bold
you're
statement.
knows hip hop and you drop that shit, I'm gonna investigate that.
Mm-hmm.
So he had an album out called Jackie Brown, fairly inexpensive on Bandcamp. Copped it. It was dope. It was dope. Crazy flows, super creative, good lines. But he was getting like, I don't know, people were coming at him like, you're not really saying nothing, you know, like, what are these beats? Could you do some boom bap? And he kind of made this album, I think, to answer all that shit, to do what people were saying he couldn't do. It's called The Grotesque and the Beautiful.
Wow. It's a hell of an album title.
I think it is 17 songs. But it is insane. And I told him right off the bat, I've got to talk to you about this thing. And he was like, I've been waiting for somebody to kind of understand what I did with this. 15 songs. And I'm like, I'm going to have to sit with this. Like, this is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like notation up, and I was listening and pulling favorite lines from every song. And there were songs that had like 3 lines. Like,
Oh.
it was a lot to deal with. By the time it was over, I felt like I had listened to a much longer album. There's a lot of that he covers in there.
Mm-hmm.
If you just pull up the first song, Suicide Hotline 3,
What's what's the name of the first song?
Suicide Hotline 3. It's unbelievable, man. I like this could be like the John Morant of hip hop right now. Like if you were talking about like a draft pick, he's like rookie of the year shit, you know?
Wow. Okay. Grotesque and so the album is Grotesque and the Beautiful.
Yep. But yeah, no, that's got to be the recommendation because I'm knee deep in that. That guy is, and everything about him is unique. I mean, his abilities with alliteration are nuts.
Okay.
Um,
Wow. Like the album cover too.
Yep. Ed Glorious did the music. I'm just saying.
Yeah, check this out.
It's fucking crazy. But yeah, stay up. This week is intense. It's intense. Right? What do we say? Sturgill Simpson, Omar Apollo, Benny the Butcher, Homeboy Sandman, Open Mike Eagle. All this week.
It's gonna be busy. It's gonna be a busy Friday.
Yep. I look forward to it, man.
Yeah, man.
We will conquer it. And Hit Boy gets a chance with Benny the Butcher. There's still a lot of people torn on this Nas album. This is going to be Hit Boy's chance, right?
Yeah.
This is a guy at the height of his powers. You know, this is. We all want the Benny Butcher album. We want.
Yeah. It's a great. That's a great way to put it.
That makes sense. Like,
Yes.
we want that like fucking superstar moment for him.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times. Everybody stay groovy, stay locked in. Drop your ballot off at town hall. You know what I mean? People who don't want you to vote, you already know how they're living. That's all I'm saying. Don't get fooled.